Am I the asshole for dividing everything by 5? I think I messed this up the first time. Trying again. I have 4 sons. I love each of them very much. I never had a biological daughter, but I used to have a close friend that was a single father. My friend had a demanding job, and his daughter, who we'll call Glinda, spent a lot of time at my home. When Glinda was 14, my friend was diagnosed with the big C. It was hard, and I did everything I could to help. Over the next 3 years, Glinda spent more and more time at my house as my friend spent more and more time in the hospital. She was 17 when he passed away. She continued to live here until she started college. My oldest son, Greg we'll call him, and Glinda were always close, as he's only a year younger than her. When he started college at the same school as Glinda, they began dating. I won't lie, the idea of having the woman I consider to be a daughter as my actual daughter-in-law made me happy. They got married 2 years ago. At Glinda's request, I walked her down the aisle while carrying a framed phone of my friend, so that both of her fathers were with her. It was a very emotional day, and there were a lot of tears. On to the conflict. Glinda has been, since shortly after my friend's death, a beneficiary in my will. When I die, everything will be divided by 5 and distributed to the kids. My second oldest son, Ted, recently approached me about taking Glinda out of the will, or cutting down her and Greg's respective shares. He stated that Greg and Glinda are essentially double-dipping, and that it isn't fair. Ted is asexual and has no plans on ever getting married. He thinks it's unfair that Greg will get twice as much because he is married. I told Ted that Glinda isn't a beneficiary because she's Greg's wife. She's a beneficiary because I helped raise her and love her. Even if she and Greg, God forbid, split up, I wouldn't remove her from the will. Ted still says it is unfair. He texted his younger brothers, who are in middle and high school, about it, which I don't appreciate. My youngest agrees that Glinda shouldn't get anything, but we all know how 13-year-olds are. My 17-year-old hasn't said anything. Glinda and Greg are unaware of this argument. Would I be the asshole if I refuse to change my will? I know legally I can leave things to whoever I want, but am I screwing over the younger boys? Is what I thought was an act of love actually a dick move? I've read so many of these. If my kids start arguing about who gets my money before I'm even dead, I swear I will eat every dollar in front of them. Edit. Not the asshole. Didn't even think to include that lol. Not the asshole. We were 5 kids, now 4. My mom talked to me a lot about splitting her money. You know what I say? Please mom, travel, buy crazy expensive shit, eat in nice restaurants. Do whatever the fuck you want cause that's your money you work hard for. Even if I get nothing, I will be okay and happy to know you had fun with it, that's your money. He has nothing to say about it. Not the asshole. I am Glinda. My fiance's grandmother was leaving everything to her daughter but decided to change it to include my fiance. Just before signing, she revealed she was leaving me as beneficiary as well. Her words were, "God, I hope you two end up together." Because we're broke, we haven't officially been announced as engaged, so she saw it as a way of me having an out, but I assured her I would be marrying him. I said because I am marrying him, why not just leave it to him because eventually I will have it as well, and if not, then I won't get anything. She said she was including me because she wanted me to know I was important too. Glinda is important too. She just happens to be married to another beneficiary. Not the asshole. You're leaving equal amounts to your children. You consider Glinda one of your children. There's no guarantee Glinda and Greg will still be married when it's finally time to split up assets, or maybe they keep their financials separate like a lot of couples do these days. Either way, do what you want with your money and don't worry about the naysayers. Ted just wants a bigger cut. Well, Ted doesn't seem to have calculated very well. He isn't entitled to any money. You could donate his share to the charity of your choosing or leave it all to your cat shoe pet. Sorry, Karl Lagerfeld's cat, to which he left a fortune. So, Teddy better rethink attempting to guilt you, pressure you, turn the family against your decision to do what you want with your money after your death. Not the asshole. Not the asshole. It's your choice. Ted needs to accept it, and maybe have a think about his priorities if he's spending time thinking about what he'll get when you've died. You've explained that Glinda is getting stuff because she's like a daughter to you, and nothing to do with the relationship. Ultimately, as siblings, if any of them was ever struggling after you died, I imagine they'd help each other, so there's no big deal there. His argument is weak and it just comes off greedy and vindictive. I don't want my parents' money personally. I'd rather they spend it on themselves and enjoy their last years. Not the asshole. Your money, your choice. To be honest, I would reduce the amount for any child who decides to complain. Let's take Ted at his word about his concerns regarding double dipping. Hypothetically, your other kids would marry spouses who have their own inheritance through their own parents. Well, Glinda doesn't have another parent besides you. So it makes sense she'd get her half of the contribution to the pool from you. And if Ted or the others choose to not get married, then they have their inheritance to support themselves. They aren't a couple, so they don't need to inherit two sets of inheritances. But the truth is Ted just wants more money and he's created this logic to justify it. Not the asshole. It's your money, you can will it to whoever you want. Their status as your biological child is irrelevant. Am I the asshole for kicking my sister out for trying to make me her babysitter? I, F31, agreed to allow my sister Melanie, F21, and her 2-year-old son Jacob to move in with me temporarily when her boyfriend kicked her out. I didn't want to do this, but I allowed myself to be talked into it by our mother. I was very clear about my rules and expectations. I did not want her to pay any rent or utilities, I wanted her to save up for her own place instead. I was clear that this was temporary. I said she could have 4 months. I admit that from the moment she moved in I was counting down the days until she moved out. My sister and I don't have the best relationship, we are very different people. I also have no desire to live with a small child. I love my nephew, but I want to love him in small doses. I was also very clear that I was not a babysitter for Jacob. I own my own business and, like the rest of my employees, I work from home. My office is the basement. I was clear that neither she nor Jacob were to be allowed on that floor while I was working because I do not want any distractions. Mel does work and she has a babysitter for Jacob, but the sitter is less than reliable. Mel's best friend was her backup sitter, but she has since gotten a job and is no longer available. I told Mel at the time she needed to find another backup and that I wasn't it. She said that she would. Well, she didn't. 2 weeks her sitter called and said she wasn't available, and Mel told me that she needed me to watch Jacob. I said no as I was working. We argued. Mel ended up leaving Jacob with me and going to work, leaving me no choice but to watch him. I had to postpone several meetings because of this. I told her to never do it again, but she argued she had no choice as she would be fired for calling in. They have an attendance policies and she has called in enough to be at that point. I told her she needed to find a solution, but I wasn't it. I also told her if she did it again that she would need to leave. Last week it happened again. Despite me telling her that I had several important calls, she went to work leaving me with Jacob. This time I decided to not just put up with it. I drove to her company with Jacob. I asked the receptionist to ask Mel to come down, and when she did I told Jacob to go to his mom and I left. Less than an hour later she is back at the house, in the basement while I am working, yelling at me that I had gotten her fired. I told her she had gotten herself fired. All I did was refuse to be her babysitter. We got in a huge argument and I told her to get out. She stormed out. Now Mel, my mom and half the family is on my ass for what I did to my poor sister, and how I need to let her back in the house. I've told her she can come get the rest of her stuff. She came and got some of it the day after she left, yelling at me for what a horrible person I am the entire time. I don't think I did anything wrong, but enough people are yelling at me I am coming her to check. Am I the asshole? Not the asshole. Why couldn't she not put her child in a daycare? That's what she should have been doing this entire time instead of relying on a babysitter. You had rules that she agreed to when she moved in. She got herself fired for not being diligent about childcare. Edit. Had a double negative there. If mom and half the family are so concerned about you being the bad guy here, remind them that they could kindly step up and offer to be your sister's host and babysitter. Not the asshole. NTA. She abandoned her son. Twice. Her job isn't more important than yours and her son is not your responsibility. Not the asshole. Let those family members who are on your ass for what you did to your poor sister take her and your nephew into their homes. Not the asshole. Your mom and half the family can take your sister into their homes and be taken advantage of, same as you were. To be honest, I find your sis's story about being fired dubious. I'd have to see the paperwork before I believed it. Not the asshole and good for you. Just because anyone is at home, but especially when it's a woman, they are not there to just do whatever anyone else thinks they should do for them. Your sister is a taker. Takers take, it's what they do. They take until the giver has nothing left to give or decides to finally be done giving. She will find someone else to take from. Not the asshole, and I would have done the same thing. You were clear with the rules. More than clear. I would tell the people who are contacting you to mind their business, and if they are so concerned, they can take care of your sister. Not the asshole. You had one rule and she couldn't follow it. Instead she disrespected your time and job and made childcare your problem. Mute your family for a while and enjoy the privacy of your home again. Sister should be grateful you didn't call the cops on her for child abandonment. Am I the asshole for telling step-sis her disfigurement is karma for being a trash human? I 27F am engaged to T30M. We met when I was 8 and became BFFs, but lost contact when I moved in with dad, stepmom, SM, and step-sis V29F when I was 15. 4 years ago, we found one another again and discovered we'd each had feelings for the other but were too afraid to say anything. I was afraid of ruining our friendship. T had insecurities about his appearance and believed I deserved better. T had an accident that caused injuries to his face, neck, and shoulder. Between surgeries and the accident, he has scarring and a facial prosthetic. He struggled with self-image due to other people's perception of him, and it took a lot to convince him that I do find him handsome. V and SM are obsessed with appearance and judgmental of anyone who doesn't fit their beauty standards. I won't go in public with them because they berate strangers. My dad knew T, but I was hesitant to introduce him to SM and V because I know how they are. When T proposed, my dad insisted we visit for a celebration dinner so T could meet them. I warned T in advance and told him we didn't have to go but didn't want to disappoint Dad. At one point, SM asked if we were planning to have a photog at our wedding and if we'd thought about a date closer to Halloween because we could all wear masks. Wouldn't that be fun? SM and V giggling. I was pissed off and T was uncomfortable. Then, V turned to T and asked, "Seriously? What happened to your face? It looks like someone set it on fire and tried to put it out with a hatchet." I lost my mind. T had to carry me from the house because I would have hurt her. T told me to relax and that it was fine. It wasn't. You don't insult the person I care about, who has been nothing but cordial, and expect me not to retaliate. Dad blew up my phone trying to apologize. I told him how hurtful they'd been, and how disgusting it was that two adults can degrade another human over something they have no control over. He told me SM was upset that I'd hurt V and expected me to apologize. I told him that wasn't happening. 2 weeks later, Dad tells me V was in a car accident and ended up with a nasty laceration on her forehead. This is where I may be ta. I went to Dad's to get some stuff and V was laying on the couch crying on the phone about how her life was over because she was ugly and disfigured and on and on. I could have ignored her but didn't. I said, "Now your outside matches your inside. Next time you feel the need to insult someone's looks, maybe take a look in the mirror first before you open your mouth." V burst into tears. SM came to see what the ruckus was, and I told her that after seeing V's face, the idea of a Halloween wedding was growing on me. That didn't go over well and caused a meltdown at Dad's house. He's upset with me for upsetting V during a very vulnerable time, and SM accused me of lacking empathy. They're demanding I apologize. I'm refusing. T understands why I did what I did but believes I shouldn't have kicked V while she's down. Definitely not the asshole. What you said was nowhere near as cruel and ignorant as the things they've said. They're shallow and judgmental and need to stop dishing it out if they can't take it. Not the asshole, treat others as you would like to be treated. Apparently V wants to be treated like crap. Not the asshole, I absolutely would not have them at your wedding at all. Not the asshole, that comment was awesome. Props to you for saying it to her face. I know it may sound bad at first, but you really are helping her, as well as getting much needed vindication for what she initially did. We often are not aware of certain things we do that are perceived negatively. This does not excuse those behaviors. V likely was unaware of how truly mean and vicious her personality was, and by teaching her exactly what it felt like, she will likely never make fun of people for their appearance. Her being upset at your comments is good. She now knows what it feels like to be on the receiving end of comments like that. YTJA, you're the justified asshole. Not the asshole. But seriously, what happened to V's face? It looks like she fell face first into a pile of glass. It looks like she smeared it with honey and a bear tried to eat it off. It looks like a baseball that was hit too hard and split at the seams. It looks like Dr. Frankenstein's first attempt. Anyone else got one? You are never an asshole for telling the truth. Good for you. Honestly, not the asshole. I think what you said was deservedly so. She and SM are disgusting and cruel with their ugly behaviors. Am I the asshole for uninviting my parents to my wedding after they called my fiancé a cradle robber? Me, 23F, and my fiancé Jake, 27M, are getting married in 3 months. He proposed to me almost a year ago, just after my grad ceremony, and I moved in with him as soon as the lease on my apartment was up. We met in college, I was a freshman and he was a senior. We had one class together and knew each other just in passing. Sometimes I ran into him on campus, but we never really hung out. He graduated the following May, and I didn't meet him again until I was out bar crawling with my friends for the new year just a few weeks after my 21st birthday. We ran into him, he bought me a couple drinks, and the rest is history. My parents have always liked Jake. They say he's well-mannered, intelligent, hard-working, etc. I've rarely heard criticism from them about him until 2 weeks ago, when my parents came over to have dinner and Mom brought along my HS yearbook. She told me she finally found it. My parents moved while I was in college and a lot of things are still boxed up or misplaced, and she wanted to share these memories with Jake, then asked if he happened to have his own yearbook. Surprisingly, he did. It was tucked away in a box of stuff in a hallway closet. When my mom saw it and got quiet, then asked Jake if he had an older brother. Jake doesn't have any siblings, which she knows, so I was confused why she asked. Then she pointed out the year on his yearbook and said, "That's 4 years before my name graduated." She was quiet for a few more seconds, then asked Jake if he graduated early, which made us both even more confused. When he said no, my mother's face scrunched up and she asked Jake, verbatim, "Why are you with my baby girl? Don't you think you should be with someone your own age? Cradle robbers disgust me. You have no respect for your partners or their parents." Needless to say, Jake and I were shocked. Before I could say anything, she started flipping out, accusing Jake of manipulating me, then tried to drag me out of the house, shouting nasty insults at my fiancé. I asked my dad to do something, but he seemed just as surprised by my mother's outburst. He finally got up and tried to calm her, but it made her lash out even more. I told her to get out of my house or I'd call the police and she finally left, but minutes later Jake and I were getting nasty texts from her. I blocked her number on our phones, leading to my father calling the next day, asking why I blocked Mom. I told him her behavior was inexcusable and that she was uninvited to my wedding. I also said she's not allowed in my house or in my life until she apologizes to us. My father tried to defend her, saying I don't understand everything and that I shouldn't be so harsh. I uninvited him as well and have been ignoring his texts and calls. Jake says I may have taken it too far, but I think he's blaming himself for my mother's behavior and wants to bend to make her happy. I don't really know though, am I the asshole here? I did ask my father why my mother called my fiancé a cradle robber over a 4-year age difference. He replied, "It's inappropriate for a woman to be dating a man who began preschool before she was even born." I didn't have enough characters to fit that into the post, but yes, I'm as lost as you are over that one. Not the asshole. But is your mother okay? It sounds like maybe she's having some kind of health event that's causing the abrupt behavioral change. You need to have a very serious conversation with your father. Not the asshole. What the fuck? That's super confusing. She didn't know how old he was. Also, is 4 years what's the issues? Not the asshole. I could see your parents being concerned if he was like 40 or something. But you're both in your 20s and even were in college at the same time. Definitely not that weird of an age gap. You are still young, in general. So maybe this is them freaking out over you getting married so soon? Either way, it is totally uncalled for. Not the asshole. This is wild. 4 years as cradle robbing? My wife and I have 3 years between us, is that cradle robbing? When I read the title I expected a 10-year difference at least, maybe even 15 or 20. Honestly, there may be something wrong with your mom. Sucks the dad got uninvited though. Maybe you can still invite him? Not the asshole, but it sounds so strange that it may be your mother has some trauma of her own that was triggered by the news. You may want to ask your dad, if you decide tone or connect. Not the asshole. 4 years? That's it? Your mom is trippin'. Not the asshole. Keep communication open with your father, but I would remain NC with your mother until you get a sincere apology. Her reaction was completely uncalled for and you have no idea what kind of stunt she would pull at the wedding.